Welcome back to Talking Ball. Today we have a special edition, the 2025 ACC Basketball Tournament preview, and we will be breaking down all of the games of the ACC tournament. We will be making our bracket predictions for the ACC tournament. There are 14 games that you have to pick from. So if you're interested, in the comments, drop down your 14 game winners. We will be doing that in a few minutes here in the video, going through it game by game. But before we get into that, I thought it would be fun to maintain a theme of this channel where we like to admit, where we got things wrong, and sometimes, occasionally, where we got things right. And before the season, I didn't get to all 18 ACC teams, but I did get to 10 of them. And I gave my predictions on their regular season records. And so I'm going to go from my worst predictions to my best here, and go through where I was wrong and where I may have actually gotten some things right. So, without further ado, we're going to start off with Syracuse. And this was my worst. And looking back on it, I mean, they did have a couple injuries, J.J. Starling, Donnie Freeman, but I knew I didn't love the transfers they brought in, and I wasn't a big fan of Eddie Lampkin. I had them going 21-10 overall, and they were 8 games worse than that. They finished 13-18. And
Nope, you didn't get that one right.
did not get that one right. All right. Next up, NC State. I knew this would be a tougher year for NC State, but I thought Coach Keats had done enough in the transfer portal, brought in some intriguing guys. It didn't help to not have Mike James the entire year. They lost a number of games by less than 5 points, but it doesn't matter. I had them going 18-13, and they went 12-19. So I was 6 games off with NC State. And they had such a bad season the year after they went to the Final Four. They did not make the ACC tournament here. And Coach Keats is out the door. So NC State is looking for a new basketball coach.
So you didn't get NC State right either.
Did not get that right either. Clemson.
Clemson.
I thought they would take a small step back. I thought PJ Hall was just exceptional. I had them going 20-11, 11-9 in conference play. That's really where I was nowhere close. They finished 26-5, so I was off by 6 games again here. But I was off by 7 games in conference play. Just complete miss by me on Clemson.
I know you're comparing your sense of where they would be at the very beginning of the season, but I will come to your defense and say very quickly, you said, hold on a second, Clemson is really a top 25 team, and that they'd be there by by mid-season, and they were. And to your point about how much you started to reevaluate Clemson, I think they were number 10
I think you're right.
in the AP, right. The latest poll, which we'll get to as soon as you're done. But I would say I wouldn't be so hard on yourself here, because you quickly reassessed that and had them, and now they're ranked number 10 in the country.
It was the one game that I thought Duke could lose this season in conference play, so I appreciate that. Still got it wrong, though. Still got it wrong. Got to own our losses. The next one for me, Notre Dame. Had them going 19-12. They finished 14-17. This one, I'm giving myself a little bit more of a pass than Clemson, because they had a number of injuries this year. Marcus Burton missed about 8 to 10 games. Braden Shrewsbury missed the end of the season. Aloko missed some time. So that certainly played a factor for Notre Dame. All right, we're moving into a little bit better section, but not perfect here yet. But we are going to get to some closer predictions. So I'm getting a little bit better as we move on here. So next, Louisville. I had them. I don't think a lot of people had them as a tournament team. I had them as like a bubble team getting into the tournament. I thought they would be 19 and 12 overall, which, considering where they were the previous 2 years, I know they ended up the season 25 and 6, so I was 6 games off. But grand scheme of things, I was really close. I was moving them in the right direction. So I think this, and they had a few injuries certainly to start the season. So honestly, they could have won more games, but I still think
And
I was close.
and
Go ahead.
along with Clemson, that was the other team that you said they're unranked now, but very quickly you said they'll make it to the top 25. And if I'm right, they're like number 16 in the last poll or something.
I think they may be 13 or 14, but like you said, we'll go through the poll in just a moment here. Next, Virginia. This one, I gotta say, I feel like I was pretty close, and I made this prediction. This is important before Coach Bennett announced that he was going to resign. I didn't love the transfers they brought in, the trajectory of the program, even before Coach Bennett left. I had them going 18 and 13 overall, and they finished 15 and 16. So I was only 3 games off in total here on Virginia. Pretty close as far as I would say. Next, Duke. I had Duke going 9 and 2 in conference play. I thought they would go 2 and 2. Really, I thought they would go 3 and 1 in those big 4 non-conference games. You know, Arizona, Kansas, Kentucky, and Auburn, and ended up going 2 and 2. So I had the non-conference portion correct. I was just 2 games off in the conference portion. I had them going 17 and 3. Obviously, Duke went 19 and 1, so I had them going 26 and 5. And their actual record was 28 and 3. So 2 games off on that one. Pretty damn close. All right. Now this is where, I can start to toot my horn a little bit, because I was 1 game off on the remainder of these, and so or better. Virginia Tech. I did not like their off season, and they ended up losing. Who was it here? Heiser Miller, who was one of their more talented transfers. He was involved in a betting scandal at Temple, so he was not eligible to play this season. I had them going 14 and 17 overall. They went 13 and 18. Next up, Pittsburgh. This one did not look good. This one did not look good for me early on. Pittsburgh, well, there was a little bit of how there's BC and AD,
Yes.
So for Pittsburgh this year, there was before Duke and after Duke. Before Duke, Pittsburgh 12 and 2. After Duke, 5 and 12.
Whoa.
So they finished the season 17 and 14. I had them going 18 and 13, only 1 game off. And my coup d'etat here, Wake Forest. Nailed this one. Did not miss by a game. I had them going 21 and 9 overall. And most importantly, I had them going 13 and 7 in conference play, which is exactly where they finished. So for the overall season, I had Wake Forest pretty well pegged. I think overall, from the 10, more positive than negative on the predictions here. But it was fun. It's fun to do them, and we're going to be sure to do it again for next season, try to get even more schools involved. So, JD, you mentioned the AP poll. What were your takeaways from the AP poll this week?
So after Auburn got their second loss, I think I was pretty confident, especially with the comeback win at UNC, that we would be ranked number one. We are um, in the AP poll. Number two is Houston, who came along, has just been playing better and better, or like some other teams are dropping off a bit, but they're pretty close in the points, though. Overwhelmingly, Duke had the first place points, so it could just be a function of they had the most second place points. And I love the rise of St. John's, just staying. I think they're 6 now, or so that was great. And then I mean, the last poll of the year, UConn is not in the top 25, and they don't deserve to be there. That'll upset your mother, but they don't deserve to be there. And after winning 2 championships in a row, but they have a chance to certainly. I think after you win 2 championships in a row, you get an automatic bid. But I think all they have to do is win a couple of games in the Big East tournament, and they're fine.
Yeah, I think even worst case scenario, if they lost, I think they would still be in. Um, Kansas also not in the final AP poll. They really had a tough Big 12 stretch. Um, for the wait, okay, in regards to St. John's, I get it's probably because of their lack of quad one wins, but I keep seeing them in bracketology as a 3 seed, and based off of how they've closed the year, their AP poll ranking, it doesn't quite add up to me. I think they should be a 2 seed. Lots of times bracketology is off by a little bit, so we'll wait to see how they finish in the Big East tournament, and then we'll see where they end up for the actual bracket, the only one that matters, right? And lastly, before we get into our preview here, I think it's important to point out for a long time this year there was only one ACC school ranked in the AP poll, which was Duke, and now Clemson. I mean, it's been a few weeks now, but Clemson is up to number 10, as you said earlier, and Louisville is up to 13. Those two schools have, I mean, they've lost like one game of their past like 14 or so. I think Louisville, Clemson's been on a tear. Same to Duke. So I think all 3 schools have a really good chance of being, in the Sweet 16 at the very least. And Duke's case, I would think, significantly could be further than that. But I think we've gone on long enough, JD. Let's start giving our predictions here for the ACC tournament. Cutting down the nets. That's right. First opportunity to cut down the nets. And the first game of the ACC tournament will be Notre Dame taking on Pittsburgh. So, JD, who do you got in this matchup between the number 12 and 13 teams? And I should mention, I apologize, before I let you go, it is important to note that this year's ACC tournament will not feature all of the teams from the ACC. The bottom 3 teams did not make it to the ACC tournament, which were Miami, who has a new coach, Boston College, who committed to their coach for next season, and NC State, which will also have a new head coach. So they've set a precedent that if you don't make the ACC tournament, there's a good chance you may not have your job next season. So something something to be mindful of for next year for the ACC basketball coaches. All right, JD, go ahead.
I don't know if you caught that yet, but there's no question how this ends. and we can then get to the ending, but that would be Duke cutting down the nets at the ACC tournament.
No
But
spoilers
okay,
here.
nope, I'm going right to the end. I mean, like you have all the board. That first game, I have Notre Dame.
That's fair. I went with Pittsburgh, one of my few upsets. Um, I think Pittsburgh. I thought they were the better team. They had a much worse finish to the year. Notre Dame is coming off of a 4 overtime thriller that they won over Cal. I think Pittsburgh kind of rights the ship here and gets one win in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I have that feeling about Notre Dame that they should get one win. All right.
Next matchup, game number 2. For all you guys filling out your comments, we're going to go by the order of the ACC tournament schedule. They have it listed from game 1 to game 14. So game number 2, Virginia Tech versus Cal.
I have Cal winning, but that's because I'm looking ahead and I want a Cal Stanford game.
They played each other earlier in the year. Virginia Tech won at Cal. This was this is my hardest game to predict, quite honestly, of all the games. I think Virginia Tech has the better team, but I think Cal has the two best players with Wilkinson and Stojakovic. And as we know, they play a style that's just very unique. They get to the free throw line a lot. They get a lot of offensive rebounds. I went for Virginia Tech, but I could see Cal winning this one. All right, game number 3, Florida State, Syracuse.
I can't ever pick Syracuse, so it's Florida State.
I also went with Florida State. First one we agree on here. I think they get one win for Coach Hamilton. All right. Now, moving into the next set of games, which will be Georgia Tech, which is game 4, Georgia Tech versus Virginia.
I have Virginia.
I do too. I think Georgia Tech had a strange season. They talk about injuries. They missed 4 rotation players throughout the majority of the season. I think Virginia is they're a tough team to prepare for. They played each other earlier this season. Virginia won. They've been playing better. They played better towards the end of the season. I like Virginia in this one as well. Game number 5. You have North Carolina versus Notre Dame. And I have North Carolina versus Pittsburgh. Who do you have winning your matchup?
North Carolina. I mean, they had a lot of fight in them in the game against Duke, and I think they get at least well, as we go on. They will. They need a win. They're going to get this win.
I agree. They're playing much better. That was a very different North Carolina team than Duke saw the first matchup. So I'm with you. They're playing much better. They should get this one done. All right. As you alluded to earlier, you were trying to set up this matchup. You have Stanford versus Cal. I have Stanford versus Virginia Tech. Who do you have winning?
Stanford, higher grade point average.
Okay. I got Stanford too. I'm going with the second best player in the conference, Maxime Reynaud, and our boy, Jalen Blakes, to get this one done. Lastly, we both have SMU for the second day of games here. This is game number 7. We both have SMU versus Florida State. Who do you have winning?
Continue another win for Coach Hamilton. So
wow.
Florida State beating SMU. I just they're going to get another win for them.
I like that. I like that a lot. I went with SMU. They've kind of shown they can beat the lower quality teams in the ACC, but they can't beat the upper half of the ACC. So I think they should get it done against Florida State, but I'd be very happy if they don't. I'm with you. All right, the game that we're both most interested for, game number 8 at noon on Thursday, will be Duke, and for both of us, it will be Duke versus Virginia. Who do you have? Right. Okay. For those of you who are only listening, JD had some very pensive thoughts. He was he was really struggling on his decision and ended up going with Duke. I'm gonna go with Duke as well in the rematch of this game. Virginia did play Duke close for the first 5 minutes of that game, so you never know if they could stretch it from 5 to 40. This is one of the better matchups we've gotten to so far. Game number 9. North Carolina, Wake Forest. The first game, the only game that they played this year, was played at Wake Forest, and Wake Forest won that game by 1 point. It wasn't quite that close, but it was still a 1 point win by Wake Forest. JD, who are you going with?
North Carolina.
Oh man, me too. Me too. I think the way they played against Duke, they have gone to another level. Now, Wake Forest dominated Georgia Tech on their senior night, but I think North Carolina's pace, if they can, it will be a battle of pace. If Wake Forest can keep it to a slow-paced half-court game, they'll win. If North Carolina can speed them up, North Carolina should win. I think they'll be able to make it into a faster-paced game. Game number 10. Louisville taking on Stanford. Who do you have?
Louisville.
Agreed. I think there's just a clear difference between the top 3 teams and the rest of the ACC this year. And for you, this is Clemson versus Florida State. Who do you have?
And that'll be the end of Coach Hamilton, and it'll be Clemson. A lot of this is also ACC is not that strong. There's a couple of things. This is time for Louisville and Clemson to show that they really are high caliber top 25 teams. But it also then sets up a great game.
Yep. It sure does. And speaking of a great game, I guess I skipped my prediction. I have Clemson versus SMU, and as I said before, there's been a clear trend where SMU cannot beat the upper echelon of the ACC, and I don't think that stops here. So I also have Clemson. We have the same Final Four here. A couple of different picks in the first 2 rounds, I should say, but we're on the same page now. Duke, North Carolina for the 3rd time. Should I ask?
So it used to be that you'd say very difficult for a team to beat another team 3 times in a row. Duke's winning. I don't think this is. In fact, the way that North Carolina was down only by 1 and then up by as many as 7, this is not going to be close. This is Duke winning by 15-20.
It's interesting because if you just looked at the box scores from the first and the second game, you would see a 17-point win by Duke and a 13-point win by Duke, and you'd think, wow, pretty similar result. Except if you watch the games, you would know very different results in very different games. I think it ends up being somewhere in between. Duke doesn't have their home crowd. North Carolina doesn't necessarily have their home crowd, although I do imagine that if we're correct, the Louisville and Clemson fans that are at the game will be rooting for North Carolina. So I do think it will be a pro North Carolina crowd than it is a pro Duke crowd. But I think North Carolina got a lot of energy from that crowd Saturday night, which was electric. And they won't have that this time. I think it's in between those two games. I don't think Duke, if they're not in the lead, I don't think it'll be for very long. And I would suspect that would be in the first half rather than the second half. I'm with you. I think Duke wins by 15 in the third matchup against North Carolina. Louisville, Clemson. Great game. Second and third best teams in the ACC, and it's not particularly close. There's a big gap, as I've mentioned, between them and the fourth best team in the conference. This is a rematch. Louisville won the first game. Who do you have winning this one?
In double overtime by 1 point, Clemson.
Wow. That's a bold prediction. I also am going with Clemson. I'm not going to say double overtime and 1 point. I don't. They suspect he will be back. I think based off their reporting, he should be back for the ACC tournament. But Rain Smith, who is on a team that shoots a ton of threes for Louisville, he is their best three-point shooter, and he shoots like 90% of his shots are from three. He did miss their last game due to an ankle injury. I think he'll be back for the tournament, but that is something to monitor. I think Clemson gets their revenge and gets this done against Louisville. And lastly, game number 14. It's the moment that I know I've been waiting for a few months. Duke, Clemson. Who do you have? Struggling.
We're cutting down the nets. This is time for a revenge game. We don't get too many. Well, we had a nice revenge tour through North Carolina. Yeah, we're going to win this game. It's going to be a good game. I'll save a score prediction for when we get closer, but it's going to be a good game. But we win. We're cutting down nets.
Duke wins. I think Duke wins by 5. I don't know the exact score as of right now. I think it will be a close game. I think Clemson, as I said, when I was going through my preseason predictions, they're just much better than what I thought coming into the season. They're a legit Sweet 16, Elite 8 team this year again. And I think it's going to be a great test for Duke heading into the NCAA tournament. And so that's a wrap. So if you guys have been playing along, drop in your 14-game prediction in the comments and who you think is going to win the ACC tournament. And this is going to be fun. We'll be covering the ACC tournament each day. At least I will. I don't know. We'll figure out scheduling. And then we'll definitely be covering Duke each day. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Please give this video a like and tell your friends. It helps us grow, and we're going to continue to grow this thing as much as we can. So with that being said, JD, any parting thoughts?
Other than we're cutting down nets, no. I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be great for the ACC to have a Final Four that's Duke, North Carolina. Just great to have that. And then what I predict to be a war between Clemson and Louisville. I think that would be a lot of fun for the ACC as a conference to just have that as the Final Four. And then the Duke Clemson game, we'll save comments on that one. So looking forward to it.
We'll see you guys soon. Peace.